Okay, title, Community-Led Policy Innovation for Local Food Growing, Half-Year Results of a Pilot Study. Next. Our project brings together 5 partners. They are borough-wide advocacy groups promoting community food growing in various ways. The Cobra Collective works with them to produce audio-visual materials. The OU team also includes Andrea Berardi, who is also co-director of the Cobra Collective, and Lorena Lavardozzi. The OU's Open Societal Challenges program funds such pilot studies to strengthen the basis for publications and external grant proposals. Our study began in April, so now we have half-year results. So next. As the national context for our study, community food growing is a broad term, which means a cooperative effort in community gardens, shared allotments, or city farms. These initiatives build crucial skills for sustainable food growing, cooperative practices, knowledge exchange, wider community engagement, and policy support. They develop production methods which enhance knowledge of locally available natural resources, thus minimizing external inputs in materials and energy. In many places, a borough-wide advocacy group often manages or facilitates such initiatives, brings them together for knowledge exchange, and pursues more helpful support measures from the local authority. Many such groups adopt the name Incredible Edible from the national network that promotes community food growing in numerous towns, shown in the next slide. Here you see the logo at the bottom, Incredible Edible, which has been running a campaign for the right to grow, which means that local authorities should provide easier access to urban land for food growing, as well as support measures such as insurance. So next. Our project had several origins and rationales. It originated in our video storytelling project, funded by the AHRC, whereby participants in community gardens learned how to make videos about their experiences. Participants expressed aims to spread their food growing and organizational skills towards localizing the agri-food system. This advance would depend on their local authority providing more helpful, coherent support measures. However, the vast benefits of these initiatives, well documented over the past decade, have rarely resulted in better support measures. As just one dimension, these sites combine several activities and societal benefits, ranging from better diet, community cohesion, and so on. Yet local authority responsibilities have been fragmented across the various units of each council. This was well documented by a report 2 years ago by the Sustain Alliance. Next. The project has at least 3 aims: to engage local authorities by clarifying and requesting more helpful support measures for community food growing, especially through transversal policies that can overcome the prevalent fragmentation, and to articulate community-driven policy innovation in local authorities, aiming to enhance their support measures for collective capacities that can help groups to achieve the first aim. The third aim is longer term, about short chain distribution. So we can move on. Next. A key dimension of the project is participatory action research. In general, it means a way for researchers and participants to work together to understand a problematic situation and to improve it. Participants come from or newly establish a group which can act as a collective subject and learner. Through PAR, such a group becomes a more effective change agent by reflecting on the outcomes of previous actions and devising future actions accordingly. A group can better combine their members' expertise, build collective capacities, create alliances, engage with external bodies, and so on. Next. So our project has these 5 borough-wide advocacy groups. You can quickly look at their logos and move on to the next. In our case, here's what PIR has meant. Each borough-wide advocacy group coordinates a joint effort by several community food growing initiatives. Together, these constitute the collective subjects of PAR in each borough. Our project calls the group leaders community networking facilitators to clarify their task and role. They collectively ask the Council for more helpful, coherent support measures, such as secure access on a long-term basis to land, free water supply, composting facilities, green waste removal, and other materials. Also, perhaps less tangibly, but more importantly, training and organizational skills. The coordination group, that is the OU team plus these facilitators, have met monthly as the main opportunity for the CNFs to exchange their experiences. This features discussion within and across the advocacy groups. Eventually, we focused on systemic structural problems in local authorities, as well as potential solutions and strategies to achieve them. In September, the CNF circulated half-year progress reports, and all those sources contributed to this project-wide report. Next. Now, more specifically on participatory action research, each case study leader has maintained what is widely called a reflective diary to record their experiences and to reflect on the outcomes of previous efforts in order to devise future ones that could be more effective. So just an example from our monthly discussions. One said, you record what you have done this week or what has gone wrong this week, and then write down ideas for what you will do about it. Such gathering of evidence is a constructive act and feels empowering. Through this reflection process with colleagues, both within their borough and across the boroughs in the project, case study leaders have evaluated, emboldened, and diversified their intervention strategies. For example, as one said, this project has given me the impetus to get myself invited to community action meetings, bringing me into communication with council officers who are waking up to the climate strategy. They are looking for groups which will do the work for them or with them. So there's lots of potential. The scary thing is how to answer that call. Next. As that quote indicates, case study leaders initially faced many doubts about how to pursue their aims, especially how to organize effective advocacy for community food growing. Within their borough, many participants lacked enthusiasm and self-confidence for several reasons, especially given the long history of encountering obstacles in the council every time they've tried to obtain better support measures. Each group aimed to create a stronger collective actor which could engage council officers and other relevant groups. Eventually, case study leaders formulated a more ambitious aim to overcome the systemic obstacles, namely to shift council practices away from a top-down governance toward the bottom-up, publicly accountable governance driven by community groups. After about a half year, the PRO process did strengthen the leader's self-confidence about various ways to move forward. This process integrated thought with emotions. This integration was understood as Santi Pensante by the Colombian founder of participatory action research several decades ago, Orlando Fons Borda. So move on. Now, in the stereotypical version of PAR in the literature, it is structured around sequential stages. This is just one of many versions. First, identify and clarify problems that warrant group action. Second, plan action to address the problems and opportunities. Implement the action, observe the effects, reflect on such effects for planning the next stage actions. Then repeat the cycle, implying a cascade of refinements towards achieving the aims, as in the diagram. Yeah, move on. However, in practice, in probably all experiences, including ours, these stages are messy and iterative, that is, running back and forth or even simultaneously. The community networking facilitators, also known as case study leaders, say, for example, stuff is always happening, new opportunities arise, and other stuff is not really working. Rather than a cascade of refinements, our process is more chaotic. Another said, PIR stages are not sequential. There's lots of different stages going on all the time because that's the nature of interacting with communities and other people. But overall, this project has led me to engage more with the council, creating more kinds of interactions. My diary has a heading plan, as in the diagram I showed you, reflection or action or observation, so that I know where I am, meaning in the diary. But it's not one thing and then the next. Such a process is in the nature of building community. And the final one, learning as you go is good. Likewise, the practice of doing it as you go along rather than just at the end. So building it into all the work you do is good. Move on. Now, just to give you a couple of these examples, so Reading, for a long time, had been running a program called Food for Families, which had been partly running community gardens and especially facilitating other people who wanted to initiate such community gardens, meanwhile trying to obtain support measures from the council. And through our project, it expanded into Incredible Edible Reading, which held a street festival on a busy street near a supermarket. So lots of people were coming by thinking about food. They built up a contact list, and then they announced, help create the future. Join a participatory workshop to develop creative solutions for a sustainable, planet-friendly future for Reading. And this indicates how the climate issue has helped to draw more people's attention to local food growing. So next is another borough. And in Andrea Berardi, co-I of this project, obtained another grant for community-led climate initiatives in several boroughs, including 3 in ours, and that is Spelthorne. And together, in effect, the projects converged to find a way beyond all these obstacles in the local authority, namely a public consultation process on ways to address the climate emergency. And in the end, after considering many options, overall they favored two ways: community food growing and rewilding. So now we'll see they made this video, and we'll see just the first minute and last minute to save time. You can watch it in your own time afterwards. So can we bring up just the first minute?
Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can do it. You can do it.
We identified flooding as an issue. We identified there are two linked issues really, which is how do you make homes more sustainable, but at the same time also that touches on how you get the cost of living down. So
And we can move to the last minute or so, around the 7-minute mark. I'd like to show the whole film, but it's better to use the time for the discussion. You can watch it afterwards. Here we go. Yeah.
objectives against the selection criteria so that we can develop a list of priorities. In partnership with the community and working with the Council, the most promising initiatives will be developed into concrete action plans.
Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can do it.
They formed incredible edible swellthorn.
You can do it. It's a grassy place, not just you and me. Why should this planet
This is on a site owned by or run by Southwest Railways, right by the rail station. It stands, so it gives them great visibility.
you can do it?
Okay, thanks. And this film was then screened at a meeting of the local council as a means to gain everyone's attention for community food growing as a policy priority. Now move on to the next slide. One just after the film. Yeah, just the next one. Now, through our experiences over several months, of the case study leaders, they confirmed an earlier diagnosis that I mentioned already, that relevant support measures and staff responsibilities are fragmented across different policy areas in each local authority. The many benefits of community food growing have had a weak recognition from most council units, or no recognition. This policy fragmentation has generally persisted despite some efforts to integrate the policies, even when a council officer has taken up the task and is even given the responsibility overall for community food growing. So we discussed these systemic obstacles and their possible drivers, and I brought in three possible drivers in policy frameworks. I'll just briefly mention them. Firstly, the new public management since 1990s result in a general fragmentation of policies and activities in order to link them with performance indicators and reduced everything to anything that could be easily measured. Second, that council units have been enacting different cultural values of what is meant by nature, of the public, of consultation with the public. I'll give you some examples later. And of course, the austerity regime, which has been worsening ever since 2010, has deterred councils from taking on any new responsibilities that would involve staff time or expenditure. However, over for the last few years, there's been a shift from NPM towards the idea of co-producing services with user groups. This can be either implicit or explicit, so there may be new opportunities, that is, they can deal with the austerity problem by mobilizing and involving people in shaping the services. So let's move on. Next one. Now here I tried to structure the way that our case study leaders and their groups have identified obstacles and, more importantly, have identified and even tried means to bypass or overcome them. So I'll just go through this briefly. So firstly, that the participants lack confidence that they can gain better support measures or even that they could continue their initiative. So the groups create peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, generate possible ways forward, and act on them. Next, the community food growing initiatives have difficulty recruiting or retaining volunteers and hence scant human resources for networking activities, much less for engaging the council. So they made extra efforts to find stable volunteers who bring self-confidence, skills, and enthusiasm for such engagement. Next, the council's barriers have generated public distrust, deterring engagement with council officers and even despondency. Solution: create engagement spaces where council officers and community groups can jointly develop proposals. Next one is the initiatives have little public visibility, especially to other food groups and councillors who might potentially offer support. So some, especially in Lambeth, have mapped the sites to highlight their roles for wider engagement. Some have held public events such as street fairs and community consultations, as I mentioned before. Next slide. This slide is mainly about engagement with the council. So, first point there is the council provides little access or secures tenure for food growing spaces, thus relegating everybody to what are called meanwhile spaces, which do not provide a strong incentive for a commitment by participants. So they request land access from other institutions, as you saw with South West Railway, which may also provide material support. And this has been successful with say hospitals, universities, which have spare land and want to involve such people. And that has provided a stronger social base for then engaging the council and making such demands to them. The council provides narrow material things, such as planters, also known as raised beds, as if they were delivering quantitative targets, and perhaps that's what they are doing. So the groups demand also provision of crucial services and skills training. Harmful practices, such as grounds maintenance staff, see themselves as tidying up landscapes, which means destroying or undermining the biodiverse resources. So the groups have engaged the council staff in an educational process on conserving biodiverse resources, which are essential for community food growing. Community food growing groups compete for small grants, thus dividing them against each other and increasing their organizational burdens, both to apply for the grants and then, if successful, to administer them through an official bureaucratic structure. So they asked the council to create a common supply of essential items and provide them free of charge. Next point is, I mentioned before, responsibility for community food growing remains ambiguous among the council units or even absent. So the groups have identified specific policies of the council, such as, well, climate, as you saw before, community cohesion, better diets, as a basis to pitch community food growing for its relevance to those policies as an entry point to relevant council officers. As regards climate, the policy is generally focused only on carbon emissions and storage. So the community consultation on climate action that you saw broadened the understanding of what are climate problems, its sources, and potential solutions, and ended up favoring community food growing as a way to address the climate crisis. Next point there is it remains marginal. Yes?
5 more minutes.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
The community food growing remains marginal to wider food advocacy, such as healthy diets, food poverty. Unfortunately, there's a siren on the street. uh, so groups have promoted a food model which links food growing, distribution, cooking, eating, and so on in order to embed food growing in the whole chain. And the groups have liaised with diverse food groups dealing with those wider food issues. Last point here that I mentioned before, the councils are fragmented, and one way forward is to promote what's called a community food model or an urban agriculture strategy that would combine all the potential benefits. So move on to the next slide. Yeah, this is conclusion. So When our project began, the partner groups had been seeking more helpful support measures for community food growing from their local authority. They encountered great obstacles, partly from the relevant responsibilities being fragmented, as well as from community food growing remaining marginal to any policy in the local authority. Through the PAR method, the groups regularly exchanged their experiences across the 5 boroughs, while each group did its own strategic reflection on their previous actions in order to devise more effective ones. They learned from the outcomes towards further actions. They began to find ways to overcome or bypass some obstacles. They became more self confident about creating a stronger borough wide group, engaging with other food relevant groups, and intervening in the local authority. These efforts have gained some improvements in council practices, regardless of whether there's any formal change in the official policies. In 2 boroughs, these efforts have been strengthened by audiovisual materials, as you saw before, and there will be more such materials across the 5 boroughs. The project has enriched participatory action research methods as means for civil society groups to gain empowerment and to bring improvements facilitated by academic researchers. These experiences will contribute to nationwide efforts at promoting the right to grow through changes in local authority practices and policy. I conclude there.